They raise it by 40%, then give a 30% discount. That's bullshit. There are exactly 2 days left to buy this product. I think for me personally, it's more manipulation than marketing.
Can we expect Yandex Delivery in Antarctica? You'd be a monopoly there.
If penguins ever learn how to press the order button, we'll be the first ones there.
When you see a discount or free delivery, you see a good deal. Azizov, however, sees a strategy that he designs himself, as he's the commercial director of Yandex Delivery in the CIS. Today, we'll talk about why we buy, how all these tricks work, and why the same business model works completely differently in different countries. Said, good day.
Good day, Cal. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
There are so many delivery apps in the world. Every app tries to carve out its own place in the market. Some improve interfaces, some play with delivery times, others play with promotions and discounts for their customers. So, Syed, please explain to us, what does a commercial director actually do? And is it true that almost everything we see in a delivery app or a store was specially designed by someone to make us buy?
Actually, there probably wouldn't be any service at all if there wasn't a demand in the market. If there's demand, then there's an app. There's delivery, like Yandex and other competitors. Personally, as a commercial director, we deal more with B2B sales. That is, we sell delivery to various businesses. For example, I don't know, you opened your own restaurant and want your own delivery, but you don't want to maintain a large staff of operators, and couriers. You just come to us, we set everything up for you turnkey, and that's it. And you have couriers. We work with Caspi or Tu, and all sorts of other large companies.
Do they also work through the app?
No, they work through a personal account. That is, businesses have a personal account and they work through it. But also, we have a feature where they can connect it to the app. They'll have it in the app. Right, but for large companies, we also do integration, meaning they work through integration. You order on their website, and the order automatically comes to us.
And they say, there's the word free. It affects people more than a discount, even when a discount is better value for money. You calculate it that way. Is that true? And if so, why does it work that way?
To be honest with you, I don't like either one, because if we're talking about sales, neither of them works. Because when you give something for free, a person uses you only because of that, as long as it's free. As soon as you start charging for it, you usually lose the customer as a result. A discount works exactly the same way. Right, but what's important with a discount? If, say, you give a customer some discount, it's important to discuss what you get in return, and ideally put it in writing. So you tell the person, okay, we'll give you a 20% discount, but what do we get in return? Can you say, give us, 10,000 orders? They say yes. We lock that in, and then it works. But if you give a discount just for the sake of it, then it's like, not really a viable situation, because they'll just use you as long as you have that discount. As soon as it ends, a competitor will offer one, and they'll switch to the competitor. We've been through this 1,000,000 times ourselves, so that's just how it works.
What's your opinion on clients who like to haggle?
Haggling's great. We're in an open market, and when people haggle with you, it's a normal thing, right? They want to get the best terms for themselves, for their company, right? To stay within their budget, so to speak. We do the same thing and meet our own sales KPIs. Well, let's say they're trying to lower the delivery price. We, in turn, are trying to get more deliveries out of them, and so we end up meeting somewhere in the middle. But if it goes overboard, of course, it's important, I guess, to set some limits. And if we've already given the maximum discount and it's still not enough, then it's very important to explain to the client that we've done everything possible and that this is truly the absolute rock bottom that we can offer you. Because since we mostly work with businesses, there are smart people there, they understand perfectly well that we also have a margin built in, and working below that, and there are also costs, and working below a certain limit, it just doesn't make sense for us to work at a loss. Why have a business if you can't make money on it? They understand, and we always reach common ground.
And some companies like to do it like, find it cheaper elsewhere and we'll give you a discount. In your case, when a client is all worked up like that and he just wants to keep pushing the price down and you've already lowered it as much as possible, but he says, but it's still lower over there. What's your typical reaction? You must have some psychological way around it.
Actually, this happens very often, but the truth is our market is so competitive that we know all the prices on the market. So what we offer and what the competitors offer in reality, well, the difference might be 50 tang. But if a client tells us the difference is, say, 200 or 300 tang or even a full 1,000 tang, then we know perfectly well that the company that offered that, if it's a large company, right, like us, then they're most likely operating at a loss. Meaning they want to snag that client and they might have, I don't know, delivery targets, but they're okay with spending money out of their own pocket to attract the client. We understand that perfectly. So then we say, well, we explain it to the client and say that we unfortunately can't do that. Right now, we have different goals, and well, we need to, make a profit. So that kind of thing happens very often. And then there are times when we're compared to small companies, like, I don't know, a courier service with maybe 20 couriers, and he offers a price that's almost 3 times lower than ours. Which, well, is perfectly logical because his costs are much lower, right? He doesn't have the people, the infrastructure, and so on that we have. Consequently, his costs are lower. But sometimes the client doesn't understand that. Our job is to explain all of this to him, lay it out, and so forth. But in the end, the choice is theirs.
Our viewers and our listeners are getting the feeling that we're living in a world of promotions. So, can you explain what a promotion is and how it's actually created? Because you base it on some numbers unknown to us, ordinary consumers, on psychology or something else. So, how is it all built? So, can you immerse us in this world of promotions?
Actually, I think it all works together as a whole. Personally, in my department, we don't do promotions. We don't have them because we work with corporate clients. But if you look at the general logic, a promotion is a combination of everything you've already listed. Probably there's no promotion that would work at a loss for itself. Right. That is, any promotion is thought out from A to Z. So it's not just pulled out of thin air. They take the actual results that occurred, yes, they analyze them, and based on that, they come up with like some promotions. Relatively speaking, I don't know, the simplest thing, you see that some product isn't selling, or say a new product, right? How do you attract people to it? You offer it for free. Buy 2, get like a 1 for free. And most often you're offered what isn't selling, so that you have 2 options. Either you write it off and throw it away, or you add it to a promotion and something gets bought. So that's like a simple example, you could say. And also, let me add, also why are promotions created? To reach a certain target, right? If your target is to attract more people, then you do promotions that will work more, probably, on attracting people. If your goal is like, I don't know, for a person to spend more money, yes, and not attraction, then you, accordingly, create a promotion that better meets this demand, and you measure it, relatively speaking.
Do corporate clients really not have promotions?
For us, it's not really promotions. It's more probably like discounts that we give for a certain volume. That is, we offer the client a tiered system, basically. We say, okay, you do like, I don't know, say 1,000 deliveries. We charge you 2,000 tenge for the deliveries. But if you do 3,000 deliveries, then we can like give you a discount of 300 tenge. That's the kind of thing we mostly do.
Uh-huh.
But an actual promotion? No. In my time, there hasn't really been anything like that.
And do you give any gifts to such clients?
No, of course not. Yes, holidays and so on. Corporate gifts. That's like a given. On New Year's, we play Santa Claus, like we act the part.
So what actually makes a person click buy then?
Actually, it's all very simple. When there's a need, and no time, relatively speaking, you look for how else you can solve it. For example, if you need a delivery, you can also get in the cart yourself, go pick it up. Call your brother, say, bro, can you like go pick it up, bring it? But that's all time, and not just yours, right? If you're asking someone. And services like Yandex, we make life easier for you. So you just press a button, a person comes to you, picks up like the keys, say, and takes them where they need to go for a certain amount. So there's no kind of specific magic there. And why you do it, only why, say, in one app and not another? Well, here, of course, it's probably a matter of marketing, a matter of the ecosystem, a matter of cashbacks, yes, in some cases, subscriptions, and so on. But that's, roughly speaking, that's why an ecosystem is created. So you live it.
There's the concept of free delivery. There's the concept of add 500 more or 2 for the price of 3. Cashback, for instance. How do you choose which tactic to use in a specific situation?
No, actually, as I see it, again, as I said before, you have a set of working tools, right? You know what works for what. Some work for acquisition, some for like making a person spend, right? And some say for customer retention. And depending on what your goals are now, for example, I don't know, let's say in June, you see that your customers are leaving. That is, the monthly visits to, I don't know, the Yandex app are decreasing. What should you do about that, right? And you choose a specific promotion that influences that. For example, cashback. You say, for the whole of July, we'll give, I don't know, 20% cash back. And that's it. And you see how people come back, start using it because they get some cash back from it. If you, I don't know, want to attract new customers, then the most effective thing is free delivery. Any project we launch, they say, look, we'll deliver to you for free. But that doesn't last forever. It's for a certain period of time. So that means the company has a certain budget. Let's say we have like any company. It doesn't have to be Yandex. You have $10,000. You say, we can spend these $10,000 on free delivery. And so how long will it last you? Well, if it lasts 2 months, then you'll spend that money for 2 months to attract customers. If it lasts a month, then a month. So any marketing and any promotion, it implies something behind it.
But what if a company raises the price by, say, 40% and then suddenly gives a 30% discount? Is that a working tool in this case or a dirty trick?
Actually, my personal opinion is that, well, probably no one has done that for a long time. And all these discounts, they come from the fact that when you have a product, before you sell it, right? Say, I don't know, a washing machine, you bought it for, I don't know, 50,000 teng. You're not going to sell it for 55. You'll likely sell it for 100,000 teng because you'll have shipping costs in there, this and that. Well, your net profit might be 30,000 tengs, right? Well, we're speaking figuratively here. These aren't exact figures, right? Well, and you understand that if it's just sitting there and not selling, if you give an additional 30% discount, then you'll earn, say, not 30,000 tenge, but you'll earn, I don't know, 20 or 15. If you're okay with that, then you give like that discount. To pull off the trick you're talking about, it will work in the moment. You'd have to build in a large percentage from the start. So if you bought a washing machine for 50,000 teng, you'd have to list it for 200,000 teng initially and be somewhat prepared for it not to sell, and then give a 50% discount. And then, yes, it'll sound like, wow, but it'll be the same price you could have sold it for initially and made sales from the start.
Many people, when they hear Yandex, the first thing they think of is monopolist. The first thing they hear is, since there are taxi services, since there are food delivery services, can you clear up these doubts since you've mentioned several times that the competition is quite high? So that means the market hasn't been fully taken over yet.
That's right.
There are still chances for entrepreneurs, for clients to place orders, to make deals. So what's the situation really like? As someone from Yandex, you can surely debunk this myth.
No, yeah, there's nothing to debunk here. I think anyone living in Kazakhstan, even in Almaty, they basically understand perfectly well that, well, Yandex is a monopoly. Yes, we hold a large share of the market, yes. But that doesn't mean we're a monopoly. We have competitors. Everyone knows them. Yeah. For taxis, it's InDriver, for example. For food, it's Wool, Glovo, Choco Food, and so on. In delivery, it's the same thing, the same competitors. Also, if we're talking about delivery specifically, there are many courier services that exist and so on. So the market here is actually large, and there's a lot of competition. So it's hard to say that we're a monopoly. Just because people, say, prefer using Yandex more than InDriver, well, some people do, that doesn't make us a monopoly. It's just a person's choice. They have a choice. It's the same as saying that, for example, Kaspi is a monopoly. But Kaspi isn't a monopoly, right?
It's just convenient.
Yeah, just convenient. That's pretty much how it works.
We all understand that what works in one city might not always work as perfectly in another city as it did in the city where you just implemented it. Suppose you're launching a business across the entire market. Why might the same tactic work in Almaty or Astana, but not work, say, in other cities?
Yeah, well, it's probably easier to look at it using countries as an example. Because with the CIS, I can see this very clearly. For instance, let's take the same product, delivery. If we look at Uzbekistan, the most important thing there is the price. So, first of all, there are competitors, strong ones at that, and second, there's the price. So, for them, it's very important. If you don't give them a good price, no matter what else you offer, what kind of service, they won't agree. So, that's what matters there. If we take Kazakhstan, in Kazakhstan, what's important is the service, on the contrary. If you provide good service, arrive on time, deliver, meet the SLAs, well, you fulfill all the commitments the business needs, then they'll likely stay with you, even if they're offered a discount elsewhere. So here, the focus is probably more on service. And if we're talking about Russia, well, their Yandex is actually a monopoly, so it's a completely different story there.
And what if we take Armenia, for example? It's a bit different there, right, with the culture?
Yes.
So how's it work there?
In Armenia, you have to look at something more local. Since it's a small country with a small population, to get people to choose you, you need to be somewhat localized. Meaning, I don't know, participating in events. If there's some event or celebration, something happening in the country, you need to be part of it and be visible, because the competition there is actually very high too.
So the population and the size of the country, it has a huge impact.
Yes, it really does. Even in Kazakhstan, looking at cities, there are places where people just don't want to use Yandex food because they've developed not exactly a behavior, but a habit. They always use Chaco food, for example, in a small town, so to speak. And they like it, and they only want to use them because it's a local Kazakh product. And that's exactly how they think there. And you can't capture that market, even if you flood them with discounts. Right. There are countries like Georgia, for example, where due to political factors, there isn't much trust, or rather, a desire to use Russian companies. So you approach that situation a bit differently there. Yeah, you explain other things to them, like we're not just about that. Look at us from a different perspective. We can help your business. It's a bit harder there.
And what about, say, Kyrgyzstan or Tajikistan? How's it there?
Well, as far as I know, we aren't in Tajikistan, but we are in Kyrgyzstan. In Kyrgyzstan, the situation is basically similar to Kazakhstan. Service is very important there, and the delivery market is just developing. Large companies are only now realizing that it's easier to work with an established company that has many couriers than to build the whole process themselves. Because when we entered the market, we saw there were large companies with many deliveries, but they had everything built on their own couriers. Our task was to convince them that we're trustworthy and can deliver just as well. Right, so the market is just developing, but service is just as important as in Kazakhstan.
Most of the region still pays in cash upon delivery. Or how does that change commerce in general? When we talk about trust, people's behavior, you know? Or has everything been automated for a long time and everyone's gone digital?
Actually, in Kazakhstan, payments are accepted by card only, regardless of the region, across the whole country. I mean, not with cash. We're moving away from that, and so are our competitors, because it involves so much hassle and red tape. The biggest problem that arose with cash is that cash stopped being cash. It turned into a transfer. So, for example, you ordered food, let's say through Glovo. I think they take cash. You choose the cash option. The courier arrives and you're supposed to give him, say, 10,000 tenge. But you tell him, I'll send it to you on Kaspi. He says, my Kaspi is blocked. Or he tells you he won't accept transfers because of a new law where a certain number of transfers are monitored. And that's that. What do you do in that situation? Who's in the wrong, you know? A lot of these debatable issues come up. And in my personal opinion, I'd rather not work with cash because everything is so automated now that I think it's better to go in that direction. But in Uzbekistan, for instance, it's a huge cash market, and everything there probably relies more on that. We wanted to open in Pakistan as well. Yeah, we had that in our plans. There, too, the issue arose that a large part of the population uses cash. So that exists in some countries, but in Kazakhstan, no, it's not a problem.
And how do you, not exactly force, but how, well, or rather, get someone to order delivery for the first time where it's never been done before?
Well, if a person or a business has already shown interest that they want to try but doesn't know and is still deciding, between us and others, it's simple. We can give them a test account, say give them 10 orders, as you like to say, for free, and they can test it out and see how our dashboard works, how the couriers work, and so on. But if you're talking about how you phrase the start of your question, how to force someone, you can't force them at all. If you, well, don't have the demand, then you won't be using delivery. If I don't need to send or sell anything to anyone at the moment, why would I need delivery?
In delivery, there are always three sides, right? Right? The customer wants it cheaper, and the courier wants more. The restaurant doesn't want a high commission, for example. How do you balance these three who have conflicting interests? And how do you find the yin and yang?
Here, it's probably important to start with the very basics. That's the courier's pay. Courier pay, well, couriers are what, roughly speaking, drive delivery. If they aren't there, there's no delivery. And so, first and foremost, they need to be paid fairly. Honestly, yeah, so to speak. Yeah. Well, even though couriers, well, I've seen various videos, people complaining there about how they're paid and so on. In reality, that's not the case. We always try to pay them honestly, fairly, and just like the market rate, sometimes even above market. If your couriers are happy, they'll arrive on time, leave on time, they'll, well, so to speak, be afraid of losing their job. That's where you get service. Now, you take this service and sell it to the business. Yeah, the business says it's expensive. You explain to them why it's not expensive. Yeah, how it's all built and so on. And basically, that's how you find the middle ground where it's okay for the client and okay for you. If they're okay with it, they'll use you for a very long time, 1, 2, 3, 4 years. If they're not okay with it, if it's expensive for them and they have no choice, they might agree to your price, but there won't be a day where they don't think about an alternative because they know it's a big cost for them and they need to cut it.
And when can you then, or when is it impossible to please everyone? That would be a better way to ask the question. Who do you choose and why?
If it's impossible to please everyone, well, what's an example? When, for instance, the client isn't happy with the price.
No. Well, we mentioned that there's the courier.
Yeah.
There's the client and there's the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So when you can't please everyone, who do you choose?
Well, probably as I started to answer, first and foremost, everything has to be okay for the courier. That's a priority for us because we have a free market. If the courier isn't happy, he won't work for you. He'll go to a competitor. Even if he does work for you, he won't try hard, so to speak, because he won't be afraid that if he gets blocked tomorrow for poor performance, he loses nothing. He'll just go to a competitor. So, that's the basics. That's where you have to start. If, for example, we pay a courier, 2,000 tenge per order, and the client says, let me pay you 1,000, right? And you're there, well, relatively speaking, if he pays us 1,000, it means we have to pay the courier 800. That's unacceptable for us. So we'd rather turn down the client than lower the courier's pay just to make a profit on it.
Then how do you convince a restaurant or a shop to sign up in that case? Since there are always, let's say, waves and correlations in the market, well, what kind of commercial deal should it be then? And where is the main tension?
The tension is always the price. Everyone tries to lower the price and so on. Right. Well, to be honest, we try to be very flexible. If we see that a business is just starting out, that it really needs some help, right? And it wants to grow, and we see potential, we don't play games. We offer them the absolute lowest rate we can offer, physically. We offer it, Joan. If it's still too expensive for them, well, unfortunately, we can't do anything about it, If that's their budget, then okay. In that case, it probably makes sense for the person to hire a courier, just one, and work with them. Mainly, it makes sense to use Yandex if you have high volumes, because you'd need to maintain a very large staff. If you have more than 5 couriers, well, someone has to manage them and pay them. What if he doesn't show up? What if he's late? If he doesn't answer the phone, you have to find someone else. Well, it's a never-ending process. To avoid dealing with that, they come to us.
Earlier, you mentioned that the ideal is when it's a very large company, and then Yandex is more profitable. So then the question arises, who are the most difficult, so to speak, and who are the most pleasant? Well, the thing is, there are office-based companies.
Yes.
There are IT companies, there are factories, manufacturing, there are completely different ones. So out of all these sectors, who are the most difficult and who are the kindest?
I'll probably start with the most difficult ones. The most difficult are the companies that are just starting out. Right. A company, for instance, might be large. Yes, I don't deny that. But they say, we're launching, say, our own app, and we want to integrate delivery into it. We want to work with you. That's the most difficult client. Why? Because when you ask them for some actual data, they can't provide it to you because they've never had delivery before. But they start making things up because they say, look, we're going to have, I don't know, 100 million deliveries. Give us 2 months. We want good rates, and so on. You tell them, well, yeah, hopefully it works out that way for you, but let's start. We can offer you this since we don't know you and it's unclear how things will go. Will you have deliveries for 2 kilometers or will you have deliveries for, I don't know, 20 kilometers, right? We'll give you this rate. You start, see how it goes, and then we can adjust it. No, that won't work, and so on and so forth. And most often, these conversations lead nowhere. But honestly, from my personal experience, having worked with so many companies like that, unfortunately, out of 10, maybe 2 actually do what they promised. And the others, well, years have passed, and, well, unfortunately, nothing worked out for them. So based on that experience as a team, maybe with clients like that, well, there isn't always a lot of trust. The most fun ones are probably, well, not fun, maybe good ones, are really large companies that have been on the market for a long time, that know what they want, that actually have a budget allocated to them, right? They have an understanding of how many deliveries they'll have, who their customer is, what distances they'll cover, what locations they have, what they're delivering, when they start, how that customer will buy, what they need during the day, within an hour, within 3 hours. I mean, all their processes are set up in a way that it's actually very easy to work with them. They have a specific person who handles, say, logistics, right? And you communicate with them and you have a connection and everything turns out very simple and easy, actually.
Well, that sounds very fun then.
Yeah. And most often, companies like that, they do market analysis. They know how much everything costs. And when you, for example, give them a price, they aren't shocked, so to speak.
They're already used to it, it seems.
They already understand, like, yeah, that's the market price. Not surprising.
How do you enter a market then where there's already a strong local player? How do you do it? Do you look for difficult or easy ones or some other way to find clients?
Actually, it's very difficult to enter a market where there's already another player who has probably the majority of companies locked in and so on. You have to have an initial understanding of what your budget is, which you can, as we say, burn, right? Spend on customer acquisition. A simple way, I don't know, you dump prices, you just offer it to clients, saying, okay, let's give you some kind of discount, so to speak, and you give us the volume. You use it, see that our service is better or, different in some way, you like it, and you stay with us. You work under this scheme for a year, attract customers, and when the year is up, you see how things stand. So if the clients really like everything, they're satisfied and so on, then you can maybe raise the price a bit, right? And so on to, well, slowly start turning a profit. At the initial stage, you spend, well, a colossal amount of money because there are problems.
And, this is probably my personal question. I heard that a few months ago. An online cinema was acquired in Uzbekistan, as far as I remember. So, again, following up on the previous question and your answer, if we're entering another country, why not, if there's enough budget, acquire a local player if it's financially feasible? Or is that not interesting and it's better to start from scratch?
Actually, that's exactly what they do. What you're saying is actually standard practice. And here, you enter a new, let's take Kazakhstan. If you want to do something new, say, for example, I don't know, international shipping by truck, rather than building it from scratch, if you don't have that, it's easier to buy a company that's succeeded and work that way. But there are market players who are, well, too big or who just aren't for sale, so to speak, and then it doesn't work. But otherwise, yes, this is practiced everywhere, in every country.
But what if, in that case, let's say you spent the money, bought a local company, everything should be fine, but the locals refuse to work with it and switch to something else. Is that a marketing department issue or just a miscalculation?
No, you have to look at why. Because when you buy a company, that company already has its own customer base. And if that customer base starts leaking away after the purchase, you have to see what changed from how it was before. Because the way it works, when one company buys another, they don't just fire everyone and bring in their own people. It's still the same team, everything works the same way. The company just belongs to different people, and they use this new company to promote their own interests, advertising, and so on. Right, so that, well, rarely happens. If it does happen, you have to look into it. It's typical. Like they say about a kitchen, the food went downhill because the chef or the owners changed, right? New owners came in, say, cut everyone's salary, and that's it. The head chef left, and the food isn't good anymore. They hired someone else, right? For less money, and consequently, the quality just isn't there. And so the restaurant loses its popularity because of that.
Is there a generally accepted, let's say, cycle that you can use to decide if you can keep working in that market? And if you don't hit the mark within that cycle, say 6 months or a year, then that's it. Well, goodbye. We're not going to work here, no matter how nice the customers are. Is there a cycle that immediately lets you know if it's promising or not? Even though before entering the market, you saw that everything seemed positive and promising.
Yeah, actually, entering a market isn't just someone getting an idea like, let's start a delivery service there, and you go in. No, first, you obviously do a lot of analytics, right? You bring in local specialists who work there, and so on. Say you go to a completely new country, like Ghana, and you know nothing about what people like, how they order, or if they even need delivery. You do extensive research, which also takes a massive amount of time. You do the research, and based on that, you decide whether to go or not. If you do decide to enter that country, you set goals for yourself, say, for a year. Like first month a loss, second month a loss, third month we'll earn this much, and so on, right? Right. So you enter the market, and then you see. If you aren't meeting the goals that were set, not even close, but you keep spending and spending money, then senior management has to make a decision. Either we stay and keep spending to try and take the market, or we realize it didn't work, pack up, and just leave.
Uh-huh.
Right. Well, that's just how I describe it in broad strokes.
Anyway, again, continuing that question about monopolies, everyone always thinks that if a company enters one market, then a second, then is present in, say, 5 or even more at once, then it means it wants to basically go global to every country, like 186 countries or more. So what can you say to those people who, let's say, really love conspiracy theories? They adore them and think that Yandex, and just in general in the future, like that Google or some other companies, well, it means there'll be everything, just everywhere. So what's your opinion on that?
Well, I think it's a normal thing because it's a question of what the company offers. If it offers to make people's lives easier and it works, and people like it, why not, roughly speaking, share it with the whole world? But if we're talking business-wise, I'm sure, again, it's probably people above me who decide these things. There's certain agreements by country, because there's still competition, right? Like, say there's Uber in America, right? And Yandex in Russia. So you already associate a country with something specific, right? Like Grab in Thailand, for example. And well, it seems to me that they have their own local agreements, which is why they say don't enter this or that market.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Can we expect Yandex Delivery in Antarctica? You'd be a monopoly there.
Well, if penguins ever learn how to press the order button, we'll be the first ones there.
All these techniques that, well, were mentioned today, do they bring a customer in once or multiple times? And what actually makes them come back?
Actually, many techniques are well known, and they're used in probably every company, and I think they work absolutely everywhere. The only thing is, as we discussed earlier, every country has its own local nuances that you need to consider when using a particular tactic. What makes them come back a second or third time is the service. Right. That's why I don't like the word monopoly, because when you have a monopoly, a person doesn't come back because you had good service. Well, maybe partly because of that, but usually it's because they have no choice. Thank God in Kazakhstan there's always a choice. If a person comes back, it means they liked everything. It means they're satisfied and everything works well. But it's very important to always get feedback.
And have you seen how a technique that took off in one market killed in another? And what does that say about how you should build a business in general?
Yes. For example, a technique we use in Kazakhstan still hasn't worked for us in Uzbekistan, unfortunately. In Kazakhstan, we used a tactic for a while where we, say, offered a discount to the customer, right? Because we had a target, we needed to attract a lot of partners, like the sales department. To handle it, we realized we could give customers a discount, operate at a bit of a loss, cover it with something else, but attract a large number of customers. We did it. The next year, we were given a different task where we had to earn several times more than the previous year. And we realized that we wouldn't achieve it with the current setup. And so we decided to talk to all of our clients. And thank God, most of them liked our service and what we do, and they were understanding about the price increase, since we have inflation and other things anyway. And because of that, we were able to reach our goal the following year. Unfortunately, in Uzbekistan, we weren't able to pull off that trick because we started to realize that when we came back the next year with a price increase, our clients just started dropping off. Despite all that, they liked the service, yeah. Many of them had given up their own couriers. Everything was great. But the price hike, I'm not talking about a 50% price hike and so on. Just 5 to 10% was a major trigger. Yeah. And that whole thing almost didn't work out there, and we had to regroup a little bit.
And what is your favorite region besides Kazakhstan, where you understand how the market works from the inside? Which of the markets is your favorite after Kazakhstan?
After Kazakhstan.
And why?
Man, well, to be honest, I've been to all the countries, for my work, and I liked them all. Each has its local flavor. It's also, interesting and has its own special something. Well, probably of those close to me, it's likely Uzbekistan, because that market is just huge, and there are local players, but at the same time, Yandex is also doing well there. And from a business perspective, it's very interesting because it's growing. This market is growing. The number of businesses is increasing, and e-commerce and so on, it's all growing. Yeah, so I don't know. I really like Uzbekistan in that regard.
And what, in general, is one or a couple of tips you can give to a business owner who is launching promotions to attract customers? What's the most important thing not to forget this time?
Probably the most important thing, honestly, I'm probably being a bore this whole podcast, is to do good analytics and really understand for yourself what you want from this promotion. And not just, they did a buy two, get one free, I'll do a buy two, get one free too. They did a 20% discount, I'll do a 20% discount too. You need to know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. Without that, the promotion's pointless. And most importantly, it must have a time frame.
A company raised the price by 40% and gave a 30% discount. Is that legal and ethical?
It's legal, ethical, but nobody does that anymore.
Why does the same tactic work in Moscow and fail in Almaty?
Because it's different people, a different local audience, and absolutely everything is different.
Which emotion sells best? Fear, greed, or the desire for convenience?
Thirst for convenience.
Why?
Well, I'm just that kind of person. You can sell me anything if it's really convenient for me.
What are we actually buying when we order delivery? Food or freedom from effort?
Freedom from effort. Because you can always just go, drive there, and buy it yourself or eat at a restaurant.
But what about time?
Time? Well, that would take the same amount. Well, you do save the trip back, so to speak. So yeah, maybe time too.
Is it true that the easier it is to buy, the less a person thinks about the price?
That's a proven theory. The more options you give someone, the less likely they are to choose anything. Give them one option and they'll definitely buy. Again, if you go to a website, let's say, and you see only one choice, right? First off, since you went to the site, you already wanted to buy something, right? So that means you liked it all. You see the choice, what you wanted, and you buy it. If you go to that same site and see a choice, say it says, I don't know, lunch for these people, lunch like this, healthy, there's so much choice that you're like, you need to compare these choices with something. You're like, okay, let's look at something else, compare it to those, and you'll most likely not buy any of it. But if you wanted lunch, just, I don't know, mashed potatoes and a cutlet, you go in and they only have one portion of mashed potatoes and a cut, you just order it. But if there are 6 different kinds, you probably won't order anything.
Why do only 2 left and offer is expiring put so much pressure on us?
Because we're always afraid. It's called FOMO in English. You're always afraid of missing out. It's just like genetically hardwired into humans, I guess.
Where does marketing end and manipulation begin for you?
Well, when like they say that, what you just said, you have exactly 2 days left to buy this product. I think for me personally, that's more manipulation than marketing.
Does delivery make us lazier, as many believe? Or does that not worry you as a professional?
I don't think that, I think that on the contrary, laziness has absolutely nothing to do with it. On the contrary, it's convenient, and people only look at it from their own personal perspective. But if you look at it from a business perspective, it develops a lot of different businesses and helps you get a lot of access to everything without leaving home.
Are services intentionally designed so that we order more and more often than we need to?
Probably yes, rather than no, because, well, that's how businesses are built. Right. But I personally believe that if you don't need it, you won't order it, if we're talking about delivery.
Convenience. Is it the new addiction of the 21st century? So you're selling a habit?
Absolutely correct. Any large company with its own ecosystem sells a habit. It's called an ecosystem for smart people and a habit for ordinary people. That's all.
Are there techniques that work, but you fundamentally refuse to use them?
Yes, to be honest, well, something like super tricky where you have to deceive people, we definitely don't do that. Right. Agreeing with the client, shaking hands on a low price, but in fact, sending a contract with a higher price. And the person has no choice. Since they've already launched everything, it's all at the start, they depend on you. We definitely don't do that kind of thing.
If you told customers the whole truth about how promotions work, would they stop buying?
Absolutely not. Promotions are the whole point of a promotion is that it works equally well for the customer and for the person and for the one who created the promotion.
What's the darkest trick in the industry you've seen and don't approve of?
The darkest trick, well, the one I personally hate most is what you mentioned. When some companies still do this, they raise prices by 40%, then give a 30% discount. That's bullshit.
Peak hour pricing that skyrockets when you need it urgently.
Yeah,
Is it fairness or exploiting a desperate situation?
that is definitely the biggest myth. It's just that people talk about it a lot, but the logic there is very simple. It's supply and demand. When it starts raining, those people who say wanted to take the bus, they say, "No, I'll take a taxi because I have to walk to the stop and I'll get my feet wet," and so on. Accordingly, if you usually have at 6 p.m., let's say 10,000 people calling a taxi at the same time, now you have 40,000 people, but you still have 5,000 taxi drivers, or even fewer, because there are drivers who say, "I don't want to work in the rain," or those who feel uncomfortable and so on. And that's it. You have more demand and less supply. So what do? The price goes up, you see? Well, it's basic economics. It's the same with everything.
Is it possible to raise the price so that the customer doesn't even notice?
Only if you do it in stages.
Like 5-10 at a time?
Well, yes. If you use that simple logic, yes, that's how.
How does a Kazakhstani customer differ from an Uzbek, Russian, or Georgian one?
Different requirements. Right. If in Uzbekistan, let's say, maybe the service itself isn't as important, but that's just what I think. Again, maybe that's not accurate because I don't live there. But if you deliver something, if the delivery itself is cheaper, but say you delivered it and there's a dent on the box, I think they won't be as upset because they, well, paid less money and they're happy with that. But with us, it's the opposite. Even if a person paid a certain amount for delivery and they get a box with a dent, they'll definitely complain, I think, because for us, as I said, it's as if service is valued slightly higher than the price.
Which CIS market was the hardest to enter?
I don't know for sure, but it seems to me that the hardest market, and it still is probably Georgia.
And to wrap up the episode today, maybe you'd like to share a final thought with us, or perhaps offer some advice for all of our listeners and viewers out there. I'd love to hear your perspective.
Actually, I'd like to say to the viewers, be more loyal, not just to Yandex, but to any company in general. Yes, there are problems, with couriers, with taxi drivers, yes, with anything, with any service. But don't forget that it's those businesses that help develop the economy, that feed many families, and that create jobs and move the economy forward. So, at some point, not at some point, but just try to think about it from this perspective too, and not just from the perspective of personal gain. That's probably all I wanted to say.
Almost everything you see when you buy is designed to make you buy more. But any trick only brings a person in once. But will they return to where they get real value? And the main thing is that what takes off in one market fails in another. So it's not about tricks, but about how deeply you understand your customer and your market. As a buyer, now you see the tricks. As a business, remember that blindly copying someone else's success is more dangerous than it seems. Said, thank you very much for such a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Mikhail, for inviting me.
Mikhail Swetley was with you. This was the xChief Central Asia podcast. We are on YouTube, Spotify, and all podcast platforms. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss new episodes. Until next time.